Your Honour, we've got to the stage, as I recall, that Mr. O'Brien, I think, had completed his questions for the Bishop. Mr. O'Brien had referred the Bishop to a document, an employment separation certificate, which I hadn't got to tender. I tender that now.
I've got it marked as Exhibit 28, 108.
Well, there you go. As Your Honour, please. And I'm not sure who else had questions for the Bishop. I think it may have been, but there may have been others. I'm not sure.
Is there anyone else apart from Mr. Graham? It's all yours.
Bishop Finnegan, my name is Gray, as you know. I appear for the Truth, Justice and Healing Council for the Diocese of Ballarat and for the Christian Brothers and the Sisters of Mercy with Mr. Woods. The first matter, Bishop, that I wanted to ask you about just concerned Ridsdale and your interview with the CCI investigator, which is at tab 84 of the Ridsdale bundle, if that could be brought up, please. I want to go to page 5. You see there, which is near the top of the page, Bishop, there's a question from the investigator and then an answer from you. The question beginning from Apollo Bay, do you see that?
Yes, yes.
The answer begins, I don't know, a few lines lower down.
Yes.
And so the question from the investigator has him saying to you, this is in 1993, that from Apollo Bay, he, Ridsdale, went to Inglewood and was there only a year. Then the investigator says that the Bishop told me, that's to say, told the investigator, why he left there was that a policeman from Inglewood came and complained, etc. And the investigator says that I, that is to say he, the investigator, asked His Grace if he knew the name of the policeman, but he didn't and there was no record. Do you see that?
Yes, yes.
And your response to all of that from the investigator was, I don't know. But obviously you could find out by learning who was there at the time. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then if we could turn to page 8 of the same document. Just scroll down slightly further. Thank you. That part of the questioning, the investigator was raising with you Mortlake matters, which was some round about 81, 82, and you see he asks you a question, but he, Ridsdale, did have a record, didn't he? And you answered, but that would not have been known to me at that stage. Do you see that?
Yes.
He asked the question, not the Inglewood complaint, and you say no.
Correct.
Now, at the time of this interview with the investigator in 1993, do you now recall today whether by then you had already learned about the Inglewood complaint, or were you learning about it in that interview from the investigator?
Well, I would believe I was learning about it from the investigator. Of course, in 1993, when Gerald Ridsdale was charged with many complaints, these things would have become public then, I believe.
Now, back on the same interview at page 6, please, towards the bottom of the page. Page 6. Yes. Yes, could it be scrolled down a bit further? I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble reading it. And a bit further still. Thank you. Sorry, back up a bit slightly. Right. So, then after some questions at this part of the interview where he was asking about the National Pastoral Institute, the investigator puts to you, the bishop would naturally have been keeping an eye on him after the Inglewood incident, and you say yes. See that?
Yes.
Now, at what point, if ever, did you know that the bishop would have been keeping an eye on him after the Inglewood incident?
Again, I would say in 1993.
Well, did you ever know the bishop was keeping an eye on him, or are you just presuming that a sensible bishop would have done so?
Yeah, well, that's the point I was going to make. When you say keeping an eye on him, I don't know if he was showing a special supervisory role of him, or like you could say the bishop keeps an eye on all priests in a sense, a general sense.
Well, the idea that that you've got knowledge in 1993 doesn't make sense. The idea that you got an understanding the bishop was keeping an eye on him because of what happened in 1993, can I say to you, bishop, does not make sense. What would make sense, though, would be, yes, of course the bishop would be keeping an eye on him. Agree?
Well, yes,
Yeah.
understanding.
And that's as I understand what you were saying in this interview.
Does that sound right to you, Bishop? Is that likely as you sit here now?
Well, as His Honour has said, if the well, this is well before, isn't it? This is well before knowledge of his activities and what they come to hand. So I'd imagine all the bishops could be doing, if he is keeping an eye on him, was the knowledge that he had from the complaint of the policeman in Inglewood.
Mr. Gray, I think we're just speculating.
Maybe so, Your Honour.
I don't think it's going anywhere.
Maybe so. I've only got
Bishop,
one.
do you need the hearing aid equipment?
Well, I don't think so, Your Honour. I mean, it's a silly habit I've got of turning my ear to those who speak.
Just one other matter, Your Honour. It's on the bottom, Bishop Finnegan, at the bottom of page 5, the same document. The investigator says to you that Ridgedale goes to Edenhope, and it is there from 76 to 79. While it was there, nothing appears to have erupted. It's all unknown to anyone bar the participants. Parents didn't know, ? And your answer is, as far as I know, there wasn't any official complaint. See that?
Yes.
Now, the answer is, in 1993, as far as I know. That seems to be referring to your knowledge as at 1993. Is that your understanding?
Yes, correct.
Did you ever have any knowledge prior to that you can now recall about whether or not parents complained at Edenhope?
I have no knowledge of it.
Good. Now, secondly, finished with that document, in the Paul David Ryan private hearing transcript, which is, I think, tab 124 of the bundle that was tendered in May, page 875. And about 6 lines from the top, line 13 on the page. This is Paul David Ryan giving evidence in a private hearing, Bishop,
Yes.
some time ago.
Yes.
And the question was at line 13, had you, Ryan, spoken to Bishop Malkerns before 95 about your attraction to adolescent boys? And if you just read through the next 3 or 4 answers, you see his answer essentially is no.
Yes.
Well, he says, yes, I had spoken to him, and then he says no.
I think he seems to be asking whether that's the question, and then he says no 3 successive times at 18, 22 and 25.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah. And then at line 27, Ryan is asked whether he had a conversation with you about adolescent boys before that time, that is before 1995. And he says, I talked to Father Finnegan about it, I think, yes. See that?
Yes.
Now, you were asked about this the other day, and you were asked about it as though Ryan's evidence was that he was claiming to have spoken to you before 1995 on this topic. Do you remember that?
Yes.
But you'll see in the next couple of answers, starting at line 32, when Ryan is asked, when was that? When did you first have that conversation with him? Ryan says, probably around this time. Question, only in 1995? Answer, yes. You see that?
Yes.
So it appears that Ryan was claiming that he had a conversation with you about adolescent boys in about 1995. You see that that's what he seems to be saying?
Yes.
So my question is, to your recollection, did Ryan ever, in 1995 or any other time, have a conversation with you about attraction to adolescent boys or some similar topic?
I have no recollection of such, and I would think it very unusual because no one ever spoke to me about their sexual attractions to adolescent boys or anyone for that matter.
Secondly, in the same document, same transcript at page 900, please. What I'd like you to do, Bishop, if you would, is just to read this page from about line 13 through to line 40, and just to orient you. According to Ryan, he is saying that, looking at line 13, that at about the time he was forced to leave Penshurst, which we know was in March, April, May 91, he was called to the bishop office and had a conversation with you in which you said various things and he said various things. Can you just read that from line 13 through to line 40?
Yes.
Now, in fact, you gave evidence the other day, and the documentary material is in the tender bundle, to the effect that you were not in Australia from August 1980 to August 1981. Remember that?
August 1980. Yes.
Sorry, 90, I beg your pardon, August
Yes,
1990.
no, that's right, August 90 to August 91.
Yes. And so, was there any meeting between you and Ryan in Australia, in the Ballarat area, at around March, April, May 91?
No, it wouldn't be such.
So is everything that Ryan says between lines 13 and line 40 completely wrong insofar as it purportedly refers to any meeting with you.
Yes, he's made a major mistake there. It's just facts are not right.
And then finally, back in the
just to make it clear, are you saying that he's got the year wrong, or that this event never happened?
I would say, Your Honour, never happened, because if someone came to the bishop's office about such a serious matter, they would see the bishop, not me.
So you're saying he's made the whole thing up?
Well, I wouldn't want to be accusing him, but his memory is playing up on him or something. It's just not right.
Well, just to be clear, according to Ryan, at line 36, just before he left Penshurst, which is in or before May 91, you said that he was to leave Penshurst. Is that correct?
No.
Finally, in the Ridsdale tender bundle again, tab 105, this was your letter of March 1994 to Ridsdale, about which you were asked a number of questions. You remember this letter?
Yes, that's right.
And towards the bottom of the first page, you were taken to the sentence which reads, "Some of these fellows now see the opportunity to obtain some easy cash." Do you see that?
Yes.
And you agreed, I think your word was that was a very rash thing to have said. I think you may have said thoughtless.
Oh, yes, I would agree with that now. Very foolish.
Just looking at the next sentence though, and albeit rash and albeit thoughtless, was the factor that you were trying to advert to, the need to establish the basics, such as that sentence says, whether the person in question was actually at the relevant place, in the relevant class, at the relevant time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can we go back to your CCI interview? Bishop at Stockton at 84. Can we go to page 12? Start just after the middle of the page. You see the question, the only incident known from Horsham is this one that came from Whitecliffs. Were there any other complaints? See that?
Yes.
And you answer the parish priest at Horsham, Frank Madden, is a friend of Ridsdale.
Correct.
That was your knowledge. That was in your knowledge, wasn't it?
Yes, well, it's, Father Madden was parish priest of Rodan, and the Ridsdale family lived across the road. And he did, as he mentioned in his testimony, he used to always go across to the Ridsdale home for a cup of tea between church services.
So he's a friend of Ridsdale and, you say, a friend of the family.
Correct.
Now you say he's an old-time priest.
Mm-hmm.
He would keep things very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
What did you mean when you said that?
Well, he would be a man that would respect confidences, and he never liked, wouldn't like just gossip and speculation.
Well, he goes a bit berserk about the way people talk about them nowadays. What do you mean by that?
He goes a bit berserk about the way people talk about them nowadays. Well, I'm not quite sure what I meant, but imagine he would be upset by the way people nowadays, in those days, would talk about things and speculate about the various aspects of people's lives.
Such as?
Well, marriage infidelities that go on. He wouldn't want people just speculating about who's on with who and that sort of thing.
Talking about Ridsdale, wasn't he?
Well, he was, but I just presume...
Wasn't talking about marriages and...
No.
So I was talking about Ridsdale.
I thought you were asking me why would he go berserk about the way people talk about them nowadays. Well, I wasn't restricting them to Ridsdale.
Well, you went on to say, anyhow, he said to me once himself that he thought that when Jerry was with him, he was totally clean.
Correct.
And you say there may have been contacts from Edenhope, but they were just friendly contacts. But then he did pass a remark the other day that he was getting worried that some of them might have been not just friendly, even in his time. What did you mean by that?
Well, as I understood it, the situation was that Frank Madden thought that when, and he says this in his evidence, doesn't he, that when Jerry Ridsdale was with him, he was totally clean. But he has friends from Edenhope who came to what we call charismatic meetings, and that's what I think Father Madden would have been getting concerned about.
What did you mean by some of them might have been not just friendly, even in his time? What did you mean by that?
Well, as I've tried to say before, I was probably making careless statements at this stage because they were just like a very casual conversation. But he did pass a remark the other day. He was getting worried that some of them might not have just been friendly. Well, was he suspicious that there was some relationship developing that would displease him?
Well, they're your words. They're your words on a formal occasion talking to the CCI investigator. What were you meaning to convey?
Well, you see, I don't consider them terribly formal in a sense. It was more like he came and asked questions and didn't expect me to know everything, and so, I would acknowledge now that this is a very careless sort of statement.
You told me
asking me, what did I mean and what have you? Well, I've got no clear memory of what I meant, really.
You told me the other day that you answered truthfully.
Yes, true. Yes, I did answer truthfully. I wasn't making up stories, but at the same time, I didn't consider it a formal interview under oath or anything like that.
So, would you tell the truth more if it was under oath as opposed to CCR?
I'd try to, for sure.
You wouldn't see an obligation to tell the truth to CCI investigator in the same light?
Well, I would imagine I was trying to tell the truth with what I knew at the time. But as I say, I'm happy to acknowledge now the very loose statements that I made.
Well, there's a passage that's then redacted. Can we go beyond the redaction? There we are. You then answer a question. We don't have the question, but your answer is you see this has been in a charismatic movement and you may have already detected. I think some of these contacts arose out of these sort of prayer groups that Jerry would run and be involved in.
Yes.
Now, as I understand it, what you're saying is some of Ridsdale's contacts, which may have been not just friendly, were coming from this charismatic prayer group. Is that correct understanding?
Yes, I think so.
And then you go on to say, I get the impression that he was involved in some that involved young people.
The prayer groups, yes.
Then you go on to say, anyhow, our friend, if she went to Father Madden, he would say, quote, woman, be quiet. We don't need to talk about these sorts of things, unquote. What did you mean by saying that to the investigator?
I haven't got it all in front of me. I thought our friend was...
It's there in front of you.
Yes.
See on your screen. We'll read it again. I get the impression that he was involved in some that involved young people. Then you say straight away, anyhow, our friend...
But wanting to be involved in an annulment process. Those sort of things. What are those sort of things? What are those sort of things? Well, I'd imagine she was talking about those sort of things. What are those sort of things? Well, I'd imagine she was talking about the problems in her marriage, and wasn't there, in this particular case, there was I thought there was a son who was homosexual. So obviously you can tell I'm vague about the precise things, but that's what I understood I was trying to convey. Woman, be quiet, we don't talk about those sort of things. Except Ridsdale was involved in it.
This is in the same answer. We're talking about the same answer that talks about Ridsdale, the charismatic movement, Jerry meeting up with young people, and in the same paragraph, the same thought. Our friend, if she went to Father Madden, would say, woman, be quiet. We're to connect this conversation about Ridsdale's behaviour with her marriage problems. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not sure what I'm saying, but Ridsdale was part of the charismatic movement, and as I understood it, so was she.
Mr. Stewart, do we have the unredacted version of this interview?
Yes, Your Honour, we do.
I'd like to see it.
Yes.
While that's coming, Bishop, you then say this lady went to see an assistant priest and came down here to have a word about it. Madden wouldn't be terribly happy about that. Now, when you said to the investigator she went to an assistant priest and he came down here to have a word about it, what were you talking about?
Well, again, I'm very fuzzy about the details. I thought she did come to me eventually, seeking the process for a marriage annulment.
So you say, you see she went to an assistant priest and he came down here to have a word about it. It's about a marriage annulment. Nothing to do with Ridsdale.
Ridsdale, as far as I can recall, it wasn't about Ridsdale. When you say nothing about Ridsdale would be involved because it was in this charismatic group, which, as far as I know, she was. But the prime purpose of her coming to me would have been to begin the process for a marriage annulment.
Now, you say Madden wouldn't be terribly happy about that. That's to say, Madden wouldn't be happy about this woman coming to complain about these sorts of things to another priest, correct?
I'm fuzzy about that. I can't see how Madden
Let's look at your own words. Please pause and look at your own words, Bishop. You say, our friend, if she went to Father Madden, he would say, woman, be quiet. We don't talk about those sorts of things. Yeah. Now, those sorts of things is a reference back to Ridsdale's behaviour with young people, isn't it?
Is it? I'm not absolutely sure.
They're your words, Bishop, and I'm just reading them back to you.
Yes. But I'm just wondering, are you reading too much into them? See.
Well, then you go on to say immediately, straight after you say that the Madden said we don't talk about those sorts of things, you then say immediately, So you see, she went to an assistant priest and he came down here to have a word about it, and you say Madden wouldn't be terribly happy about that. Now I suggest to you, Bishop, that's plainly a discussion about Ridsdale's relationship with young people.
Well, I acknowledge that that could be so, but I mean, it must, I know I'm a bit thick in these things, but it wasn't in my mind at the time, as far as I know. Madden wouldn't be happy about a priest, say, challenging his authority. I presume Madden thought he was handling it quite well himself. He wouldn't be happy about another priest going, talking about the situation, whatever it was exactly, I don't know.
Well, I suggest to you that what you were saying to the investigator was that Father Madden was trying to keep allegations about Ridsdale's misconduct quiet.
Well, earlier on he said that Ridsdale's time in Horsham was totally clean.
I'm just asking you to tell me whether or not my understanding of what you told the investigator in that passage is correct.
But what I mentioned, what I told the investigator, well, that's what's been recorded. Yes, it is correct, but I wouldn't have the same interpretation that you're reading into it, I'm afraid.
Yes, well.
Just to conclude that line of questioning, let me just check. Marriage matters were a common issue before the diocesan authority, weren't they? In other words, there was a marriage tribunal.
Correct, yes.
So where people had marriage issues, no one would be worried if there were discussions about that, would they?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand. No one would have worries about.
Well, you've indicated to us that what could have been discussed were marriage issues with respect to this woman whose name is redacted, life. But the church formally recognised that marriage issues were a matter for open and formal dealings in the church. You had a marriage tribunal, didn't you?
Yes, but it wasn't. I mean, it existed, but what was said there wasn't public.
So it wouldn't be the sort of matter that Father Madden would say, woman, be quiet, we don't talk about those sorts of things. He would have referred her to the marriage tribunal, wouldn't he?
He should have, yes.
Yes, you may.
Bishop Finnegan, did you in this. Give any of his evidence in this hearing?
No, I didn't hear a word, but I've read the reports that came out about it.
Well, assume that Father Madden said that at the time Ridsdale left Horsham in 1988, where he had been as assistant priest to Father Madden, Ridsdale said to Father Madden words to the effect that my past is catching up with me, the police are on my tail, and I have done the wrong thing with children, or words to that effect. Assume that Father Madden has told the Commission that that's what Ridsdale said to him. All right? You make that assumption?
Yes.
Okay. And Father Madden also said that at the same time, when he was leaving Horsham, Ridsdale said to him, don't worry, Father Madden, I haven't done anything with children here while I've been with you. Make that assumption that that's what Ridsdale said.
Yes, well, it's reported, isn't it, in the transcript somewhere?
Yes, it is. So, if we have page 12 of this document.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
you may, Mr. Stewart, I think, in fairness to the Bishop and everyone, we should make available that portion that's been redacted, but redacted to take out the identifying names, because then you can see.
Yes.
Well, I won't say any more.
No, quite.
Yes, Your Honour.
I think
In
you're
particular from the foot of page 12.
What's been redacted, yes, down the bottom of page 12. Now, we can do it by taking out the names, but what you'll find is that this woman who's spoken of did have some marriage problems, but she's actually talking about her son, who had problems with Ridsdale. But we need, I think you'll need to do that. Now, Mr. Gray, I don't know what the best way is. Whether, well, can I ask you this, Mr. Stewart? Will you need to ask the Bishop to stay while some other matters are looked at?
Yes, Your Honour, there are a few things I need to check, and I would ask, in any event, this issue aside, that the Bishop not be excused just yet, and we could take those other matters up with him probably later in the day.
Well, Mr. Gray, if you're happy with that, we'll get a properly redacted document that enables you to see the context.
Yes, I'm pleased that that will be done. It seemed to me that it needed to be done.
Yeah. Do you have anything else now?
I might just defer that. I don't have much, but I could leave the whole thing to one.
Right. Well, Mr. Stewart, do you want to ask any further questions now, or do you want the Bishop to wait until some further work's been done?
I'll wait, Your Honour.
Right, Bishop. There are some matters that Mr. Stewart needs to have concluded so that he can ask you a few more questions. So I'm not going to excuse you, but I'll ask you to stand down now, and probably later today we'll ask you to come back into the witness box. All right? Yes, Mr. Stewart.
Your Honour, I call Father Brian Patrick McDermott.
Father, would you take an oath on the Bible?
Sorry.
Would you take an oath on the Bible?
Yes, I will.
You take the Bible in your hand and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give in this Royal Commission
the evidence I shall give in this Royal Commission
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
nothing but the truth.
Yes, thank you. Take a seat, please. Yes, Mr. Stewart.
Will you state your full names, Father?
Brian Patrick McDermott.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm a retired priest.
And of which diocese is that?
It's of Melbourne.
Now, as I understand it, Father, you attended at the Corpus Christi College Seminary in Werribee from 1972 to 1979, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, were part of those years spent at Clayton, or are they all at Werribee? How does that work?
1 year at Werribee and the rest of the time at Clayton.
And those two seminaries, or two different locations of the seminary, it's all part of the same institution, is that right?
Yes.
Now, Paul David Ryan started at the seminary at the same time as you, is that right?
Yes.
So I take it you knew him in the seminary.
Yes, that's correct.
But he came there whilst starting at the same time. He was a few years ahead of you because he had started his studies in Adelaide, is that right?
Yes.
And you were ordained as a priest of the Ballarat Diocese on 11 May 1979?
Yes.
And you served as the Bishop's Secretary in the period February 1985 to January 1990, is that right?
Yes.
And you were appointed to that position, obviously, by Bishop Malkerns.
Yes.
So you served as Bishop Malkerns' secretary.
Yes.
And when is it, Father, that you moved from the Diocese of Ballarat to the Diocese of Melbourne?
I finished in Ballarat in 1995.
Yes. And when did you, what is the proper word for when you get accepted into another diocese?
Incarnated.
Incardinated. When were you incardinated in the Diocese of Melbourne?
I think sometime around 2004 or thereabouts. I'm not certain of the exact time.
Yes, thank you. Your Honour, I tender Your Honour, Father McDermott was summoned to appear and did appear in a...
Well, we'll make it Exhibit 28-109. It's nearby, isn't it?
I understand, sir. If I could just inquire of those who run the electronic versions whether they have a redacted copy of that transcript. I understand that they do, so we will be able to put up, in the meanwhile, the requisite parts of it on the screen.
Well, it'll become 28-109.
Now, Father, do you recall that you gave evidence previously to the Royal Commission about you having heard about a meeting of priests when you were in, a meeting of priests about Gerald Ridsdale and the problems that people were having with him in Mortlake?
Yes.
Now, if I could ask that you be shown from the private hearing transcript just tendered, page 1645. And starting at line 19, if you'll scroll up. sorry, the other way. And you were asked, so you became aware of Ridsdale's situation when? And then you set out, or you responded by dealing with this meeting. We'll just look at it quickly and then I'll have some questions out of it. You said, it would have been, I think, when I started back in Ballarat in 1980, I was in Camperdown. Ridsdale was in Mortlake at that time. I became aware that well, before we carry on, can I just establish from you, where is Camperdown relative to Ballarat?
Camperdown is between Colac and Warrnambool, I think about an hour's drive southwest of Ballarat.
Right. And you said Ridsdale was in Mortlake at that time. I became aware that some parish priests from around Mortlake went together for a meeting. I'm not sure who called it or why, but the rumour had it that it was talking about Ridsdale and activities that had happened there. I presume sexual activities. But I never heard from any parish priest that he had been to a meeting about that or who organised it while it was there. But at that stage, I became aware that there was something happening with Ridsdale. And then you asked further about the rumour, and you said, yes, well, I would have become aware that there was a meeting in which they discussed Mortlake. In my mind then was that it must be something to do with says raised detail. I suppose you can't, can you help us on the meaning of that?
I'm not sure what raised detail means.
Perhaps it's a transcription difficulty. And then it was put to you Ridsdale's behaviour, and then you said yes. That became sort of clearer when someone, a parishioner from Mortlake, who I probably met at a funeral or something like that, started talking then about there had been a meeting, and it was about Ridsdale, and it had become knowledge in Mortlake that Ridsdale behaviour was with children. That happened, and I didn't hear anything else at that stage. That's when I first became aware that there were a couple of priests in Ballarat. This is in 1980, I think it was. It may have been a little later. I was in Camperdown until effectively May of 82 and left there to go to some study, so it would have been prior to May of 82. I think it was soon after myself going to Camperdown. Now, just in relation to that, did you hear then too, in other words, prior to May of 82 when you left Camperdown to go and do some study, that there was a boy living in the presbytery with Ridsdale at Mortlake?
No, I had no knowledge of that.
And that's something about which you subsequently learnt, I take it?
Yes, but a long time later.
Are you able to identify when you learnt about the boy living in the presbytery with Ridsdale at Mortlake?
I think it was when I was reading some transcripts from here.
You hadn't heard about that until preparation for the Royal Commission?
Not that I can recall, I believe not.
Now, the way I read this and understand it, you think you heard about this meeting about Ridsdale's behaviour in Mortlake from someone who spoke to you at a funeral. Would that be right?
On some occasion, maybe it was a funeral or some other event.
Some other occasion. And by someone speaking to you, are you referring to a parishioner or another clergyman?
I think I'm referring probably to someone from Mortlake who had probably come across to Camperdown for some reason.
A parishioner?
I don't know.
So you're not able to help us in any way with further identifying the source of what you heard about there having been a meeting about Ridsdale?
No.
Now, if I can ask that you be shown page 1655. If you can scroll down a little. That's okay. Right. Now, you came to talk about your interaction with Mrs. BAE, as it's put there at line 26. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you know who that is that I'm referring to?
Yes.
Okay, if you run into any difficulties, there is a list of pseudonyms there, and you'll be able to track her name there. Now, just what transpired in relation to Mrs. BAE is set out in the evidence you gave previously in the following pages, and also in a statement by Mrs. BAE. I should just clarify for Your Honour and Commissioners' information at this point that Mrs. BAE is not available to give evidence to the Royal Commission. So we have a statement from her, but we don't have oral evidence from her. I'd like to show you a letter written by Mrs. BAE to the Royal Commission, at least to Bishop Malkerns, dated 21 August 1987. All right, we'll come back to that Father. Your Honour, those are my questions for the Father at this stage. The transcript was served on all the parties first thing this morning. I appreciate, of course, that, and we'll hear what they have to say, that they may or may not have had sufficient time to read it and deal with it. And if that is the case, then it may be that we can deal with that again later in the day. But maybe they can deal with it now.
What's the position?
Your Honour, Commissioners, for my part, I'm almost through it, and I don't see that I would need to ask any questions.
What about anyone else?
Your Honour, I'd like to reserve a position until I've had a chance to read it, if I may.
Have you been able to read any of it yet?
I'm sorry?
Have you been able to read any of it yet?
I've read some of it at a pretty rapid scan while the previous witness was in the witness box.
Anyone else?
Your Honour, I'd like to reserve my position. I haven't had a chance to read any of it at this stage.
When will you read it?
As soon as I get a hard copy, Your Honour. I haven't been provided with a hard copy at this stage. Yes.
Well, that makes it hard. Anyone else?
Your Honour, I've read some of it in soft copy. I consider it's likely I would ask some questions.
Well, Father, I'm going to ask you to stand down too, and you're not excused. When they've had a chance to look at the transcript, we'll ask you to come back. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Stewart.
Your Honour, I call then Father John McKinnon.
Is he here?
Your Honour, bear with me for a moment. Your Honour, I understand he's in the precinct and someone's gone to look for him.
You just make inquiries.
Your Honour, the father, I understand, is on public transport on his way here and will be, I'm told, another hour. What I might ask is that we take the morning adjournment now, and then we'll work out what we can resume with at 11:30.
We'll do that. All right, we'll take the morning adjournment.